Let me ask you something. How many times have you walked away from a situation thinking, how did I let this happen? You see, life isn't always fair, but sometimes we unknowingly hand over the keys to our dignity. We let people take advantage of us, use us, and play us for fools. Today, we're going to talk about why that happens. Not to point fingers, but so you can learn how to take those keys back and lock the door for good. Your sense of self-worth is the foundation for everything in your life. It's not just about confidence or self-esteem. It's about how you perceive your own value in this world. When you don't recognize your worth, you open the door for others to determine it for you, and trust me, they'll always undervalue you. People pick up on how you carry yourself, how you speak about yourself, and how you allow yourself to be treated. If you see yourself as less than deserving, others will take that as a cue to treat you as such. It's not always intentional or malicious, but it's a pattern rooted in human nature. People respond to how you see yourself. When you underestimate your value, it shows up in your actions and decisions. You might settle for less than you deserve in relationships, at work, or even in your personal goals. You accept treatment that doesn't align with the respect you should demand. It might be subtle, like brushing off a disrespectful comment or staying silent when you should speak up. Over time, these small acts add up, chipping away at your sense of self and reinforcing the idea that you don't deserve better. It becomes a vicious cycle. The more you tolerate, the less you believe in your worth, and the less you believe in your worth, the more you tolerate. Your value isn't determined by what others think of you, but by what you think of yourself. If you wait for external validation to feel valuable, you'll always be at the mercy of other people's opinions. One moment, someone's praise might lift you up, but the next, their criticism can bring you crashing down. You have to ground yourself in your own worth so deeply that no external force can shake it. This doesn't mean arrogance or an inflated ego. It's about a quiet, unshakable belief in who you are and what you bring to the table. Knowing your worth requires a shift in mindset. It's about rejecting the belief that you have to earn love, respect, or validation through your actions or achievements. You are inherently valuable simply because you exist. This doesn't mean you won't strive for growth or success, but it means those things don't define your worth. You define it. When you embrace this idea, you start to see the world differently. You stop chasing after people who don't see your value. You stop settling for situations that make you feel small. You stop seeking approval from those who are never satisfied. Recognizing your worth also means taking responsibility for how you allow others to treat you. People will only treat you as well as you allow them to. If you don't set boundaries or speak up when you're disrespected, you're sending a message that it's okay to undervalue you. This isn't about blaming yourself for others' behavior, but about understanding your role in breaking the cycle. It's about standing tall and saying, this is who I am, and this is what I deserve. The way you see yourself influences everything, from the opportunities you pursue to the relationships you nurture. If you believe you're not good enough, you'll hold back, afraid to take risks or reach for more. But when you recognize your worth, you step into your full potential. You take chances because you know you deserve success. You walk away from toxic relationships because you know your peace is more valuable than their approval. You invest in yourself because you believe you're worth the effort. Understanding your worth isn't a one-time revelation, it's a practice. It's about reminding yourself daily that you are enough, even on the days when you don't feel like it. It's about looking in the mirror and seeing someone who is flawed but still deserving of love, respect, and kindness. It's about embracing your imperfections and knowing they don't diminish your value. When you truly understand your worth, you stop looking for it in places it doesn't belong. You stop giving away pieces of yourself to people who don't appreciate them. And most importantly, you start living a life that reflects the incredible value you bring to the world. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define how far others can go in your life and how you expect to be treated. They aren't barriers meant to isolate you, but guides to protect your emotional, physical, and mental well-being. Without boundaries, you become vulnerable to being manipulated, disrespected, or taken advantage of. People often test limits consciously or unconsciously to see how much they can get away with. If you don't establish clear boundaries, you send a message that you're willing to tolerate behavior that might harm or devalue you. Creating boundaries starts with self-awareness. You need to know what feels right and what doesn't. Too often people ignore their discomfort or suppress their instincts to avoid conflict or maintain harmony. But that discomfort is a signal that your boundaries are being crossed. Whether it's someone dismissing your opinions, invading your space, or demanding too much of your time, ignoring those feelings leads to resentment and exhaustion. Boundaries are your way of protecting yourself from these situations and ensuring that your needs are respected. The fear of setting boundaries often stems from a fear of rejection or conflict. You might worry that saying no will upset someone or damage a relationship. But the truth is, healthy boundaries strengthen relationships. They create mutual respect and understanding. When you set boundaries, you're not being selfish, you're showing others how to respect you while still respecting them. It's about balance. You can't pour from an empty cup, and if you let people drain your energy or time without limits, you'll find yourself depleted and unhappy. Boundaries also reflect how much you value yourself. When you let others constantly overstep, it signals that their needs are more important than yours. This can lead to feelings of being undervalued or unappreciated. By setting boundaries, you're asserting your right to be treated with respect and fairness. It's not about controlling others, but about taking control of how you allow them to interact with you. It's about protecting your peace and ensuring that your energy is spent on things and people that align with your values. Setting boundaries doesn't have to be confrontational. It can be as simple as calmly stating what you need or expect. For example, if someone always interrupts you, you can say, "I'd appreciate it if you let me finish my thoughts before responding." If a friend constantly asks for favors but never reciprocates, you can say, "I can't help with that right now." The key is to communicate your boundaries clearly and confidently without apology or justification. You don't owe anyone an explanation for taking care of yourself. Of course, setting boundaries is only half the battle. Enforcing them is where the real challenge lies. People might push back, especially if they're used to overstepping. They may test your resolve, hoping you'll revert to old patterns. This is where consistency is crucial. If you give in or let violations slide, you undermine your boundaries and send mixed messages. Stay firm and remind yourself why the boundary exists in the first place. It's not about being rigid or unkind, it's about ensuring that your needs and values are respected. Boundaries also require flexibility and ongoing evaluation. As you grow and change, your boundaries may need to shift. What worked in one phase of your life might not work in another. For instance, the boundaries you set with coworkers when you were single might look different after you have a family. It's important to regularly check in with yourself and adjust your boundaries as needed. Remember, they are tools to serve you, not rules to constrain you. They empower you to take control of your interactions and protect your energy. While setting them can be uncomfortable at first, the long-term benefits far outweigh the initial challenges. You'll find yourself surrounded by relationships that are healthier, more respectful, and more fulfilling. You'll also gain a deeper sense of self-respect, knowing that you're prioritizing your needs and standing up for your worth. Trust is a cornerstone of all meaningful relationships, but it should never be given lightly. Trusting someone without evidence is like building a house on unstable ground. It might stand for a while, but eventually will crumble under the weight of reality. Blind trust often stems from a desire to see the best in people or a need to believe in their intentions. While these instincts come from a good place, they can leave you vulnerable to disappointment, betrayal, and manipulation. Trust is not a gift, it is something earned through consistent actions, integrity, and reliability over time. When you trust without evidence, you place your faith in assumptions rather than facts. This creates a dangerous dynamic where someone can easily take advantage of your willingness to believe in them. It's not about being cynical or distrusting everyone, but about recognizing that trust is a process, not an automatic right. People reveal their true character through their actions, not just their words. Words can be persuasive, charming, and even deceptive, but actions consistently reflect who someone truly is. Rushing to trust can lead to ignoring red flags. Sometimes people show you exactly who they are, but you may choose to look the other way because you're eager to believe in their goodness. You might dismiss warning signs, convincing yourself that they didn't mean harm or that things will improve with time. This kind of wishful thinking sets you up for heartbreak and betrayal. Trusting without evidence often means ignoring the uncomfortable truth in favor of a comforting illusion. However, illusions always shatter, leaving you to deal with the painful reality you try to avoid. Blind trust can also stem from a fear of confrontation. It's easier to trust someone up front than to question their intentions or behavior. Asking questions or waiting for evidence of reliability might feel uncomfortable, as if you're doubting their character. But healthy trust doesn't mean avoiding discomfort, it means building a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. Trusting someone too quickly doesn't spare you from conflict, it often leads to bigger problems down the road when that trust is broken. Another factor is the societal expectation that trust is a sign of goodwill and openness. Many people feel pressured to trust others to avoid seeming guarded or suspicious. But trust isn't about pleasing others, it's about protecting your emotional well-being and ensuring your relationships are built on solid ground. Genuine trust is not about giving someone the benefit of the doubt without reason. It's about observing their consistency, honesty, and accountability over time. When you give trust too freely, you risk putting yourself in situations where you're manipulated or taken for granted. This doesn't mean you should approach every relationship with suspicion, but rather with a sense of caution and discernment. Look for patterns in behavior, not isolated incidents. Someone who repeatedly shows up for you, keeps their promises, and treats you with respect is earning your trust through their actions. On the other hand, someone who makes excuses, breaks promises, or evades accountability is showing you that they don't deserve your trust. Trust also requires reciprocity. It's not enough for you to extend trust without evidence, while the other person gives nothing in return. Healthy relationships are built on mutual trust where both parties consistently show up for each other. If you're always the one extending trust while receiving none in return, it's a sign of an unbalanced dynamic that needs to be addressed. Trust should feel secure and balanced, not one-sided or draining. Learning to trust with discernment doesn't mean building walls or shutting people out. It means setting standards for who earns a place in your life. It's about valuing your emotional energy and ensuring that those you trust are deserving of that privilege. Trust is precious, and treating it as such protects you from unnecessary pain and disappointment. When you approach trust with care, you create relationships that are stronger, healthier, and more fulfilling. Fear of conflict is one of the most common reasons people allow themselves to be mistreated or manipulated. It often stems from a deep desire to avoid discomfort, rejection, or tension in relationships. Many people equate conflict with negativity, seeing it as something that disrupts harmony and creates stress. But in reality, avoiding conflict doesn't preserve peace, it erodes it. By suppressing your voice or ignoring issues that need to be addressed, you create a foundation of resentment and frustration that can eventually explode into bigger problems. At its core, the fear of conflict is tied to the fear of losing approval or acceptance. You may worry that standing up for yourself or expressing disagreement will cause others to think less of you, withdraw their affection, or retaliate in some way. This fear can be paralyzing, making it easier to remain silent even when something feels wrong. Over time, this silence becomes a habit, and you may find yourself constantly putting others' needs and desires ahead of your own just to avoid rocking the boat. This pattern not only diminishes your sense of self-worth, but also reinforces to others that your boundaries can be ignored. Avoiding conflict can also come from past experiences. If you faced harsh consequences for speaking up, whether in childhood, relationships, or professional settings, you might have learned to associate conflict with pain or failure. As a result, you develop strategies to keep the peace at all costs, even if it means sacrificing your own well-being. However, this approach doesn't eliminate conflict, it merely postpones it, often allowing it to grow into something more significant and difficult to address later. One of the biggest misconceptions about conflict is that it always leads to confrontation or damage. In truth, conflict can be an opportunity for growth, understanding, and connection. Healthy conflict allows you to express your feelings, clarify misunderstandings, and establish boundaries. It's not about winning or dominating the other person, it's about finding a resolution that respects both parties. When you avoid conflict entirely, you rob yourself of these opportunities and settle for surface-level relationships that lack depth and authenticity. Another consequence of fearing conflict is that it gives others unspoken permission to take advantage of you. When you don't address harmful behavior or stand up for your needs, you teach people that they can overstep your boundaries without consequences. This dynamic can lead to repeated patterns of disrespect as others learn that you're unlikely to challenge them. It's not that they're inherently malicious, they're simply responding to the signals you're sending. By avoiding conflict, you inadvertently create an environment where your voice is diminished and your needs are overlooked. Fear of conflict often leads to internal conflict. While you may avoid an external disagreement, the unresolved issues linger within you, creating a sense of frustration and powerlessness. You replay situations in your mind, thinking about what you could have said or done differently. This inner turmoil takes a toll on your mental and emotional health, often manifesting as stress, anxiety, or even resentment toward others. Over time, the cost of avoiding conflict becomes greater than the discomfort of addressing it. Learning to embrace conflict doesn't mean seeking out arguments or becoming combative. It means recognizing that your feelings, needs, and boundaries are just as important as anyone else's. It means understanding that disagreement is a natural part of human relationships and that it doesn't have to be destructive. When approached with respect and clarity, conflict can strengthen connections rather than weaken them. The key is to communicate honestly and assertively, expressing your thoughts without attacking or blaming the other person. This approach fosters understanding and creates a space for mutual resolution. Facing conflict requires courage and practice, especially if you've spent years avoiding it. It may feel uncomfortable at first, but each time you stand up for yourself, you reinforce your sense of self-worth and teach others to respect your boundaries. Conflict is not the enemy, silence is. By finding your voice and learning to use it effectively, you reclaim your power and create relationships that are more balanced, respectful, and fulfilling. People-pleasing is a habit many fall into without even realizing it, driven by the desire to be liked, accepted, or valued by others. At its surface, it can seem like a positive trait after all. Being helpful, kind, and accommodating feels like a way to foster good relationships and avoid conflict. But when taken to an extreme, people-pleasing becomes less about generosity and more about self-sacrifice. It involves prioritizing others' needs and desires at the expense of your own well-being, often leaving you drained, unfulfilled, and resentful. One of the main reasons people-pleasing takes hold is the deep-seated fear of rejection or disapproval. You might feel that saying no or asserting your boundaries will cause others to view you negatively or even abandon you. This fear pushes you to go above and beyond to meet everyone's expectations, even when it's unreasonable or unsustainable. Over time, this behavior becomes a pattern, and you may find yourself agreeing to things you don't want to do, avoiding confrontation, and suppressing your own opinions just to keep others happy. People-pleasing also stems from a belief that your worth is tied to how much you can do for others. You may feel that the only way to be valuable in someone's life is to constantly accommodate their needs, take on their problems, or make sacrifices for them. This mindset can be particularly damaging because it places your self-esteem in the hands of others. If they're happy, you feel validated. If they're not, you feel like you failed. This creates a cycle where you're constantly chasing approval, but never truly feeling fulfilled or appreciated. While people-pleasing may seem like a way to build strong relationships, it often has the opposite effect. When you prioritize others over yourself, you're not showing them your authentic self. Instead, you're presenting a version of yourself that you think they want to see, which can lead to shallow or one-sided connections. Another consequence of people-pleasing is that it leaves little room for your own needs and goals. When you're constantly focused on others, it's easy to lose sight of your own desires and priorities. You might put off pursuing your passions, neglect self-care, or stay in situations that don't serve you because you're afraid of disappointing someone else. This self-neglect can take a toll on your physical, emotional, and mental health, leading to burnout and a diminished sense of self-worth. Breaking free from people-pleasing requires a shift in mindset and behavior. It starts with recognizing that your value doesn't depend on how much you do for others. You are inherently worthy of love, respect, and acceptance simply for being who you are. Setting boundaries is another crucial step. Boundaries aren't about being selfish or uncaring. They're about ensuring that you're met, and that your relationships are built on mutual respect. It's about finding a balance where you can give to others without depleting yourself. It's about understanding that you can't pour from an empty cup, and that taking care of yourself is essential to being able to show up for others in a meaningful way. The journey to overcoming people-pleasing takes time and effort, but it's a journey worth taking. By prioritizing your own needs and embracing your authentic self, you create a life that is more balanced, fulfilling, and true to who you are. Ignoring red flags is a behavior that often stems from hope, denial, or the fear of confronting uncomfortable truths. Red flags are the warning signs that something is off, whether in a relationship, a friendship, or a professional setting. They may come in the form of subtle behaviors, inconsistencies, or outright disrespect. Yet many people choose to look past these signs, convincing themselves that things will improve or that they're overreacting. Ignoring red flags doesn't make them disappear. It simply delays the inevitable and often deepens the hurt when reality finally sets in. One of the main reasons people ignore red flags is the desire to believe in potential. You might see glimpses of the good in someone and cling to the hope that their better qualities will overshadow their flaws. This optimism can be admirable, but it can also blind you to patterns of behavior that are damaging or toxic. Instead of acknowledging the reality of who someone is, you focus on who they could become. This mindset not only enables harmful behavior, but also places the burden on you to fix or change the situation, which is neither fair nor realistic. Fear also plays a significant role in ignoring red flags. You might fear losing a relationship, being alone, or facing conflict. This fear can make you rationalize or downplay concerning behaviors, convincing yourself that they're not a big deal or that things will get better with time. However, time doesn't change patterns, it reveals them. The longer you ignore red flags, the more entrenched they become, and the harder it is to address them. What starts as a small issue can grow into a much larger problem, leaving you feeling trapped or regretful for not addressing it sooner. Another factor is the tendency to prioritize short-term comfort over long-term well-being. Confronting red flags often requires difficult conversations, setting boundaries, or making the decision to walk away. These actions can feel overwhelming, especially if you're invested in the relationship or situation. As a result, it can feel easier in the moment to brush aside your concerns and avoid the discomfort of confrontation. But ignoring red flags doesn't eliminate the discomfort. It postpones it and often magnifies it as unresolved issues continue to grow. Denzel is another power force behind ignoring red flags. You might not want to admit that something is wrong because it challenges your expectations or hopes. This is particularly common in romantic relationships where emotions run deep and the fear of losing someone can cloud your judgment. Denzel allows you to maintain the illusion that everything is fine, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. But living in denial is like building a house on shaky ground that might hold up for a while, but it's only a matter of time before it collapses. Ignoring red flags also often stems from a lack of self-trust. You might doubt your instincts or second-guess your feelings, telling yourself that you're being too sensitive or overreacting. This self-doubt can make you vulnerable to manipulation or gaslighting, where others dismiss your concerns and make you question your perception of reality. If something feels off, it's worth paying attention to, even if you can't immediately pinpoint why. The cost of ignoring red flags is high. It can lead to unhealthy dynamics, emotional pain, and a loss of self-respect. When you overlook warning signs, you send a message to yourself and others that your boundaries and well-being are negotiable. Recognizing red flags requires courage, self-awareness, and a commitment to your own well-being. It means listening to your intuition, seeking clarity, and being willing to make difficult decisions when necessary. Addressing red flags doesn't guarantee that every situation will improve, but it ensures that you're being honest with yourself and taking proactive steps to create a life that reflects your worth. By facing these warning signs head-on, you reclaim your power and set the stage for healthier, more fulfilling connections.